Doctor Who and video games have a bit of a weird history. While there have been many over the years, they haven't really received a good reception. It really says something when the only one considered good is an expansion pack for another game. With its time warping setting, it is surprising that no developer has actually managed to make it work in video game format. However, one British game company very nearly came close. On the 12th of November 2019, independent game developers Maze Theory released Doctor Who The Edge of Time for the PlayStation VR, Oculus Rift and any console to do with VR, where you, the player, help the Doctor save reality from a mysterious virus, exploring alien planets, travelling through time and space, and fighting iconic monsters such as the Daleks and Weeping Angels. Since January 2018, Maze Theory have embarked themselves into finding new ways of storytelling through VR technology, so it makes sense that Doctor Who would be a perfect choice for this style, and despite a few delays, the game was released and met a mixed reception, but that didn't stop the company from expanding on the concept. On the 11th of October 2020, it was announced that Maze Theory had developed a new game, which as many pointed out felt like an expansion of The Edge of Time, but this time released on all next-gen consoles, an expanded story and guest appearance by none other than David Tennant as the 10th Doctor, before it became a recurring thing. Much like Edge of Time, Edge of Reality features the player becoming the Doctor's companion in an effort to stop a reality-destroying virus. A later DLC edition made it part of the Time Lord Victoria story, but that's a whole different story itself, and it doesn't really affect the game that much. But what does happen in it? From a first-person perspective, the game starts off in a normal laundriette. Already this is a great setup. Doctor Who has a habit of bringing the mundane into a science fiction setting, and this is a perfect place to do it. You can start learning about the controls, which you can by interacting with objects and collecting notes during your travels for your own personal journal. Due to the timey-wiminess, the pages have been written by the player from the future to help their past self, containing information on different characters, setting and objects, which makes it slightly confusing for first-time players as the pages mention stuff that's yet to happen. Also, during the game you can collect different objects associated with all the different Doctors that can be viewed in the miniscope located in the TARDIS. After the first chapter, you then get to control the TARDIS itself and arrive on the first alien planet. During the visit, you have to solve puzzles, collect crystals and save an AI computer called Emma, who becomes a companion to the player, and since this is a British game, she has a British type personality.
Oh my days! Why didn't you pick up that big shiny tablet?
After the second chapter, you arrive in Victorian London and encounter the Weeping Angels. Out of all the monsters in the game, the Angels are the best adapted. The premise of being in a small dark area with the Angels constantly stalking can bring a paranoid and eerie presence. Every time you turn your back, an angel could be right behind you. Add suspenseful music and we have a perfect horror game. If you wanted that high feeling adrenaline, this is the perfect level. Play it at night with the lights off for a more thrilling experience. In chapter 4 you encountered Daleks again, only this time you can take control of a Dalek casing. I wish I could say this is the most fun part of the game, but unfortunately due to the tank controls, it can be easy for the camera to get stuck when you're trying to manoeuvre and aim at an enemy. It's also at this point onwards that the game itself kinda loses its sparkle, as the Doctor explains that the virus was made by an eldritch creature called the First, a being so old it's believed to be the first thing to ever exist, and believes that the whole of creation needs to be destroyed to bring peace. Again, that fits within the Doctor Who universe, and after defeating it, you'll be forgiven that the game is over by that point. Well, no. You see, after defeating the First, the virus was then stolen by the Cybermen and have upgraded it to be used to convert the whole of creation. This happens very late in the game, and it can make the gameplay feel more repetitive by this point. On the plus side, we now have the 10th Doctor with us. But unfortunately, despite only being seen from a distance and on screen, the model looks dated and slightly plastic. I'm not going to blame the designers for that. Realistic proportions are more different than exaggerated monsters. However, the cyber plotline does come with a new addition, the Cyber Reaper, an ancient Cyberman upgrading itself with different cyber parts over the years. To me, this is what Ashida, the lone Cyberman during Series 12 of the show, should have been like. But that's just my own personal opinion. At the end of the game, we find out that the virus is still going on because in one timeline, the 10th Doctor chooses to stay with Madame de Pompadour from the Series 2 episode, Again in the Fireplace. This plotline comes right out of nowhere, and other than giving an excuse for the virus to be the Doctor's fault, has no build-up and no real impact to the plot. But anyway, the player destroys the Cyber Reaper and the Doctors drop you back home. Since the game ends where it begins, whenever you start a new game, you're setting up a time loop to happen. However, everything you collected will still be counted for. Before I give a final verdict, I just want to point out, since the music from the main show is copyrighted, they had to compose and record new music from scratch. The music was composed by Richard Wilkinson, and he perfectly captures the tone and excitement from the show, while adding a unique flavour to it to make it sound original. I highly recommend listening to the soundtrack, and hopefully one day he does the music for the actual show. Verdict for the game, it's a mixed bag. It has the tone and atmosphere, but due to the occasional awkward graphics and weird story pacing, it can be off-putting for casual gamers. But it shows a lot of potential, and if I was told that this was a prototype for a mainline Doctor Who video game, I would have been very impressed. However, Maze Theory have done a third game called The Lonely Assassins. Unlike the previous games, this was an app exclusive that got ported onto consoles, and it is the best out of the three. Challenging yet simple, puzzles have an interesting concept, fan-pleasing references, and best of all, serving as a semi-sequel to one of the best episodes in the show's history, with even the original actors reprising their roles. And of course, it stars the Angels.